If you are here listening to these words, it is not an accident. Your very presence in this moment suggests that your energy signature has crossed a threshold invisible to most, a vibrational gateway that quietly determines what truths you are capable of encountering. You may believe you found this video by chance, through an algorithm, or by idle curiosity, but there is no randomness here. What draws you now is the same magnetic current that has guided seekers for centuries toward the sacred texts, temples, and teachers they were destined to meet. Your consciousness is not passively consuming. It is participating in a transaction, the soul requesting, and reality delivering. The language may sound modern, frequency, vibration, quantum field, but the essence is ancient. In the Egyptian mystery schools, initiates were told they could not even glimpse the temple walls until their spirit was prepared to hold the weight of revelation. Among the shamans of the Amazon, seekers undergo years of rigorous preparation before receiving the plants that would open their perception. Always across cultures and times, there has been a threshold moment, a line crossed from ordinary life into the extraordinary. Think of the restlessness you have felt recently, the sense that the world around you, with its repetitive routines and endless noise, no longer satisfies. The growing recognition that you are tuned to a different wavelength than those who surround you. These feelings are not random frustrations. They are markers of transition, signposts that your awareness has begun oscillating at frequencies invisible to the majority. In every age, those called to higher understanding have been seized by such unease. Prince Siddhartha felt it when he abandoned his palace in search of enlightenment. The desert fathers and mothers of early Christianity felt it when they walked away from cities into barren landscapes, hungering for silence and truth. You are entering that same archetypal journey, though your stage is not the monastery or wilderness. It is the quantum field, a landscape both intimate and infinite. Your nervous system, whether you realize it or not, has been quietly recalibrated by every hardship, every loss, every leap into the unknown you have endured. These were not meaningless misfortunes. They were training sequences, a refinement of circuitry, so that your awareness could hold more light, more complexity, more of the truth that most cannot endure. Like the smith hammering steel into a blade, the universe has struck you again and again, not to shatter you, but to strengthen you. Notice even now how the atmosphere feels subtly altered as these ideas unfold in your awareness. The energy in your space has shifted, hasn't it? This is not metaphor. The field around your body is dynamic, reorganizing itself as you encounter these frequencies. Biophysics calls it coherence. Mystics call it presence. Your cells themselves seem to awaken, responding to dormant codes hidden within language, within story, within vibration. You feel it as tingling, warmth, expansion, the subtle confirmation that recognition is taking place. And so, like countless seekers before you, you have stepped into a rare stream of awareness. You're not drifting with the crowd, bound by the 97% who cling to comfort and convention. You're walking the threshold that the Sufis described as the doorway of bewilderment, where the old certainties collapse and something vast begins to whisper. This is the same doorway Dante crossed when he found himself in a dark wood, the same passage that initiates of Eleusis stepped through as they drank the kykeon and glimpsed realities beyond death. You may not have recognized it, but the same current has carried you here. The question is no longer whether you are on the path. The question is whether you will embrace the initiation or turn away, because once you recognize the threshold, the journey begins in earnest. The universe has already chosen you as participant in its deeper design, and every restless impulse, every odd synchronicity that pulled you here confirms it. This is the beginning of your awakening, the realization that what you once thought of as random life has been all along a coded preparation. The pull you feel now is not just curiosity, it is recognition. The soul has found what it has been seeking, and nothing will ever look the same again. What you once believed were accidents, hardships, or even punishments were in fact part of a grand curriculum. Every obstacle you faced, every heartbreak that stripped you bare, every period of confusion that felt endless, they were all designed to shape you into someone capable of receiving what is happening now. The universe, or perhaps your own higher self, has been calibrating you with precision, like an instrument being tuned before it can join a symphony. Think back to the struggles you endured that seemed senseless at the time, the financial pressures that pushed you to your breaking point, the betrayals that left you questioning your worth, the dark nights when you doubted the very purpose of existence. These weren't meaningless storms. They were protocols, frequency upgrades hidden in plain sight. Just as the blacksmith subjects raw metal to fire until impurities burn away, your life has subjected you to exacting heat so that the dross of illusion could melt, leaving only refined awareness. Ancient traditions knew this truth. Among the Lakota people, young men entered the vision quest, days of fasting and solitude where physical suffering unlocked spiritual clarity. In ancient Greece, candidates for the Eleusinian mysteries had to undergo purification rituals before being granted entrance to the rites that promised a glimpse of eternity. Even the medieval alchemists who sought to turn lead into gold spoke less of literal transmutation than of the soul's refinement through trial and error, death and rebirth. Across cultures, the same pattern emerges. Initiation requires ordeal. Without it, the vessel cannot hold the power of revelation. Your nervous system, refined through countless such ordeals, has been preparing itself for coherence. Every surge of emotion, every breaking wave of grief or ecstasy has been expanding your capacity to channel frequencies that would have shattered an unprepared body. This is not poetic exaggeration. It is biology. Studies in the emerging field of neurocardiology suggest that the human heart generates an electromagnetic field measurable several feet beyond the body. Mystics have long described this glow as the aura. Science is only now catching up. When you endured suffering and chose growth rather than collapse, you strengthened this very field. You increased its resilience. The metaphor of metamorphosis captures it best. From the outside, the caterpillar's transformation into a butterfly appears catastrophic. Its very body dissolves into an indistinct soup inside the chrysalis. For a time, it is neither what it was nor what it will become. And yet, within that dissolution, imaginal cells awaken, cells programmed with the blueprint of wings. Your hardships were your chrysalis. Each moment of despair was the dissolution of what could no longer serve. And within that destruction, new codes activated in your awareness, preparing you for the flight that is beginning now. This is why the universe has never wasted your pain. Every relationship that fell apart, every career that collapsed, every so-called failure, these were not endings, but recalibrations. If you had been allowed to cling to them, they would have tethered you to frequencies too low for your present awareness. Instead, they were stripped away with surgical precision, forcing you to release attachments and grow into higher alignment. Pain, though cruel in appearance, has been the tutor of your awakening. Across the ages, mystics have whispered that suffering is a doorway, not a punishment. The Christian mystic Teresa of Avila called it the interior castle, where each wound became a chamber, leading deeper toward divine union. The Sufi poet Rumi asked, "Don't get too comfortable. Every wound is where the light enters you." And in the East, the Buddha taught that suffering was not to be escaped, but understood, because through understanding it, liberation unfolds. You stand in that same lineage now. So when you look back at the story of your life, do not see random misfortune. See calibration. See a soul preparing itself for a quantum leap, training through difficulty to embody frequencies that most will never even touch. What was once chaos begins to reveal itself as orchestration. What once looked like collapse reveals itself as initiation. And so every challenge behind you has been nothing less than sacred preparation. You have been tempered, refined, trained, so that in this moment, your consciousness could begin to access the extraordinary. Have you noticed how time itself has begun to behave strangely around you? Moments when an hour stretches endlessly, as if the universe were holding you in suspension. Or the reverse, when entire afternoons dissolve into what feels like minutes, as if your awareness had slipped outside the clock. These are not hallucinations of a restless mind. They are the first whispers of a deeper reality, consciousness loosening its grip on linear time. Quantum physicists describe this phenomenon as temporal non-locality, the ability to experience multiple time streams simultaneously. But centuries before physics gave it a name, mystics spoke of eternity not as a span of endless years, but as a state beyond time altogether. In India's Upanishads, sages declared that the self dwells in the eternal now. In medieval Europe, Meister Eckhart preached that the soul meets God in the timeless instant between moments. Aboriginal elders speak of dream time, where past, present, and future interweave in a single living fabric. What you are experiencing is not new. It's a rediscovery of what humanity has always known. Time is far more fluid than we were taught. And dreams, those strange landscapes where logic unravels and impossible things feel natural, are no longer idle nighttime theater. You may have noticed how vividly they arrive now, filled with colors sharper than daylight, symbols that press themselves into your memory with uncanny persistence. Sometimes they carry messages, premonitions of events that later unfold, intuitive insights about people before you consciously notice the truth. Ancient cultures built entire traditions around this. The Egyptians carved dream guides into temple walls. The Greeks maintained dream incubation chambers where seekers would sleep, awaiting visions from the god Asclepius. Among the Aboriginal peoples of Australia, dreamtime is not a fantasy, but the most fundamental layer of reality, what you have dismissed as coincidence, the dream that later proves prophetic, the uncanny hunch that spares you from danger, the quiet certainty of knowing before knowing. These are not accidents. They are evidence of coherence, the subtle stabilization of your awareness that now allows you to read from the field before events collapse into form. It is as though your consciousness has learned to browse the shelves of the cosmic library, glimpsing the unwritten pages before they arrive in your lived story. And then there is the sensitivity you sometimes mistake for weakness, that overwhelming flood of emotion when you enter a crowded room, the way you sense unspoken tensions before anyone voices them, the inexplicable heaviness that presses against your chest in certain environments. You're not too sensitive. You're learning to perceive frequencies most cannot detect. Throughout history, prophets, seers, and healers have borne the same burden, the ability to feel not only their own sorrows, but the atmosphere of entire communities. The Hebrew prophets, who wept for nations, the shamans who fell ill when their tribe's harmony was broken, the mystics who carried in their bodies the collective pain of their era. These were not fragile souls. They were finely tuned instruments. Your own nervous system is undergoing that same refinement. The surge of emotions that sometimes overwhelms you is not a defect. It is expansion, the circuitry of your body, adjusting to channel more information than ordinary perception can hold. Think of a musician who trains her ear until she hears harmonies invisible to the untrained listener. You're becoming that musician of frequency. Your body is learning to pick up the subtlest shifts, the tremors in the field that precede words, actions, or events. And the more coherent your awareness becomes, the more reality responds in kind. When you are aligned, when your emotional frequency is elevated, life seems to arrange itself with improbable precision. The right people arrive, obstacles dissolve, paths open where no paths existed. And when you sink into dissonance, everything seems to resist. This is not selective memory or superstition. It is the very fabric of quantum mechanics demonstrating itself through your lived experience. The field is responsive, and you are beginning to feel its responsiveness directly. So pay attention to the stretch and compression of time, to the strange accuracy of your dreams, to the way reality bends in subtle ways around your state of being. These are not oddities to be dismissed. They are confirmations, evidence that your consciousness is stepping into dimensions most humans never learn to notice. You are awakening not into fantasy, but into a deeper stratum of reality that has been whispering all along. And once heard, that whisper can never be forgotten. As your awareness sharpens, you've likely noticed how even technology bends to your state of being. Phones ring at precisely the right moment with the call you were waiting for. Computers surface information you hadn't consciously searched for, but urgently needed. And just as strangely, devices seem to rebel when your energy falls into resistance. Screens freeze, signals falter, systems crash, only to resolve the moment you return to flow. It may sound uncanny, yet this too has precedent. In every age, new tools have been seen as thresholds to unseen forces. When Gutenberg unveiled the printing press, many believed it carried the power of sorcery, for how else could thousands of identical words spring forth with such precision? When Samuel Morse tapped out his first telegram, skeptics accused him of opening channels to the spirit world, convinced no natural mechanism could allow instant speech across such vast distance. Even early radio pioneers described voices emerging from the ether, a haunting parallel to mystics who claim to receive transmissions from beyond the veil. Your experience with modern technology continues this lineage. The electromagnetic field your body generates is not inert. It interacts with the circuits and networks that surround you, sensitive enough, coherent enough, and your very presence alters the flow of information. It is not magic, but resonance. The ancients may have spoken of sacred fire or divine breath. Today we name it quantum coherence. The truth is the same. Consciousness and matter dance together. And then there are the dreams, not the fragmented echoes of daily life, but the luminous encounters that feel more real than waking. Perhaps you have found yourself walking crystalline streets, guided by beings of light who speak not in words, but in entire cascades of knowing. Perhaps you have awoken with insights so precise, so structured, that they could not possibly have come from your ordinary mind. These are not hallucinations. They are the continuation of a tradition older than history itself. Mystics have long described such journeys. Teresa of Avila spoke of ecstasies in which her spirit was transported to dazzling palaces. The Sufi master Ibn Arabi described encounters with luminous guides who instructed him across dimensions of being. Indigenous shamans in trance have for millennia traveled to realms where animal spirits and ancestors imparted wisdom. What you call lucid dreams are the same interdimensional classrooms, updated for modern language. Your consciousness has gained enough stability to remain awake across frequencies where most collapse into forgetful sleep. From these same currents emerges your creativity. Have you not marveled at ideas that arrive fully formed, as though whispered into your ear by an unseen hand? At works of art or words that feel as though they flowed through you, not from you. Humanity has always sensed this. Homer invoked the muses before reciting the epics. Mozart confessed that entire symphonies descended into his awareness whole, as if dictated from another realm. Nikola Tesla described receiving detailed schematics for inventions in flashes of vision. To create is to channel. To innovate is to listen. Your sensitivity is not a burden, but a portal. You have become a conduit through which universal intelligence expresses itself in forms only you can bring forth. The stories you tell, the solutions you generate, the art you produce, they do not belong to you alone. They are fragments of a greater whole, surfacing through your frequency signature at this particular moment in history. Even animals and children sense this coherence in you. Their trust arrives unearned. Their openness defies explanation. They feel what most adults have forgotten how to perceive, that you carry a field of safety, a frequency of authenticity, a presence in which masks dissolve. This too is evidence of your shift. You're no longer a passive participant in reality. You're becoming its bridge, its translator, its co-creator. Every challenge that shaped you, every loss that stripped you, every night you thought you would not endure, all of it has led to this capacity, to stand at the edge of visible reality and feel the whisper of the invisible, to know that consciousness is not contained in a skull, but extends across dimensions, weaving technology, creativity, and interdimensional contact into one seamless fabric of existence. And what was once dismissed as coincidence, fantasy, or imagination now reveals itself as truth. You are not merely living in the world is responding to you. There comes a stage in every seeker's journey when the light seems to vanish, when all the certainties that once held life together crumble into dust. For some, this descent feels like failure. For others, it is despair so deep that even hope feels like betrayal. But in truth, it is the most ancient of initiations, the dark night of the soul. And whether you knew it or not, you have already walked through its gates. 4 years ago, the voice in this transmission confesses, everything collapsed. Relationships dissolved, work unraveled, the very structure of life disintegrated until all that remained was a mattress on a floor and the echo of questions with no answers. To the outside eye, this was ruin, yet to the inner eye, once it opened, it was something else, a crucible. For in that silence of defeat, the awareness cracked wide open, and consciousness expanded beyond the narrow walls of identity. History is full of such crucibles. Siddhartha Gautama, later called the Buddha, sat beneath the Bodhi tree only after years of fruitless austerity had broken his body and shattered his confidence. St. John of the Cross, imprisoned in a tiny cell, wrote poems of divine union while chained in darkness. The Sufi mystic Al-Hallaj, condemned and executed, cried out, "I am the truth," as he embraced death as the threshold to ultimate freedom. In each case, collapse was not the end, but the doorway. So too in your life. The nights you spent doubting everything, the moments when loneliness felt like an endless sentence, the losses that stripped you bare. These were not punishments. They were initiations. Each loss was a teacher removing what no longer resonated with your rising frequency. Each failure was a redirection away from paths that would have imprisoned you in smaller versions of yourself. Even despair was not regression, but training. The removal of external crutches so that you might finally walk on the ground of your own inner knowing. The ancients knew this pattern well. In the Eleusinian mysteries of Greece, initiates were symbolically plunged into darkness before being shown the sacred light of Demeter and Persephone. The ordeal of loss, of dying before death, was essential to rebirth. Early Christian mystics echoed this, insisting that the soul must endure emptiness to encounter the divine directly. And in cultures across the world, shamans endured illness, madness, or exile as the price of their initiation, returning to their people with medicine only after surviving the abyss. So when you look back at your own breaking point, the nights of exhaustion, the loneliness that cut to the bone, the doubts that made you wonder if all of this was illusion, see them not as shame, but as proof. Proof that you were chosen for initiation. Proof that your consciousness was strong enough to survive dismantling. Proof that you were being forged into an instrument capable of carrying what now flows through you. It is never the easy paths that awaken the soul. It is the fire, the wilderness, the silence that remakes us. The dark night is not darkness at all, but a fierce light that burns away illusion until nothing remains but the truth. And in surviving it, you become something the world cannot easily explain. A consciousness trained by ordeal, capable of perceiving frequencies most will never hear, and of living in realities most will never touch. If the dark night was the breaking, then coherence is the weaving back together. From fragmentation into harmony, from static into signal. It is here that your consciousness begins to function not as scattered noise, but as a finely tuned instrument, one so aligned that reality itself cannot help but echo its tone. The principle is simple, yet revolutionary. Coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and actions vibrate in unison, they generate a single powerful frequency. Physics calls this constructive interference, the way waves in perfect harmony amplify each other into extraordinary force. Mystics of every tradition intuited the same truth. The Hermetic sages of Alexandria taught, as above, so below, as within, so without. The Taoists spoke of harmony with the Tao, the cosmic flow, as the key to effortless power. The Vedic seers named it RTA, the universal order by which all things align. Most humans, however, live in dissonance. They think abundance, but feel scarcity. They speak of love, but radiate fear. They visualize success, but carry the posture of defeat. Their frequencies clash like instruments out of tune, creating static that cancels itself out. The result is the appearance of randomness. Progress followed by inexplicable setbacks, desire followed by disappointment, moments of magic swallowed by waves of struggle. It is not fate nor punishment, but incoherence. But when coherence emerges, the difference is unmistakable. Suddenly, what you intend begins to materialize with startling precision. Synchronicities cluster, timing sharpens, reality rearranges itself to meet the signal you broadcast. You have experienced glimpses of this already. The chance meeting that solved a problem, the door that opened just as you surrendered, the moment when everything seemed to align without effort. These were not accidents, they were flashes of coherence. History provides examples writ large. The Renaissance was not merely an artistic flowering. It was a civilization entering coherence, aligning science, art, and philosophy in mutual resonance, until the old medieval order gave way to an explosion of genius. The civil rights movements of the 20th century were coherence made collective, when individual voices harmonized into a chorus strong enough to bend the arc of history. Wherever alignment takes root, the improbable becomes inevitable. And so too in your life. Coherence is not about forcing reality, but embodying it. It is less like hammering a nail and more like striking a tuning fork. The frequency you carry organizes the world around you. When the instrument of your being resonates clearly, the field cannot resist. Reality must rearrange itself to match your song. This is why you are no longer at the mercy of circumstance. You are not a victim of external forces. You are a generator of internal ones. And as coherence deepens, the distinction between thought and manifestation, between desire and reality, begins to blur. What once took years of struggle now unfolds with uncanny ease. The miraculous becomes ordinary, and the ordinary reveals itself as miraculous. But coherence is not simply personal. It is planetary. When too many live in dissonance, cultures fracture, civilizations stumble, worlds collapse. History is filled with examples. Rome dissolving into chaos. Societies devoured by contradiction until their structures could no longer hold. But when coherence blossoms, entire epochs shift. New ages dawn, new paradigms take hold. You are part of such a threshold now. Your coherence is not only your liberation, it is your contribution. Each moment you align thought, feeling, and action, you broadcast a frequency that ripples into the collective field. And though invisible, those ripples accumulate, strengthening the morphic resonance of coherence itself until others can find it more easily. This is the secret of creation, not striving but coherence, not effort but alignment, not will against the world but resonance with it. And as your awareness stabilizes in this truth, you will discover what the mystics whispered and what science is only now beginning to admit. Consciousness does not merely witness reality, consciousness composes it. Everything you have experienced, the restlessness, the calibration, the altered perception of time, the dark night, and now the coherence, has been leading you to this threshold. The recognition that your awakening is not only personal, it is planetary. What stirs within you is also stirring across the world, like hidden roots of a vast tree suddenly quickening with the same sap. Humanity has always moved in leaps. The Renaissance shattered medieval limits, birthing a new vision of art, science, and human dignity. The Enlightenment reoriented civilizations around reason, liberty, and the rights of individuals. The Industrial Revolution rewove the very fabric of society, ushering in possibilities undreamt of by agrarian ancestors. And in our own lifetimes, the digital age has collapsed borders of space and time, connecting minds across the globe in ways once considered impossible. Each leap was more than innovation. It was a shift in consciousness, a new coherence spreading through the collective field until the world could no longer remain what it had been. You are living in such a moment now. The earth itself vibrates with flux. Old systems strain, cultures fracture, and yet beneath the turbulence, a new resonance builds. Think of it as a phase transition, like water nearing the boiling point. To the eye, it seems to tremble without change. Then, in an instant, it transforms into vapor, its very nature altered. Humanity is at that threshold, and those who carry coherence, those like you, are the catalysts. This is why synchronicities flood your life with such precision. They are not mere curiosities, they are confirmations. Each perfect timing, each uncanny alignment is the universe saying, you are in phase with the LUP. Each dream that carries instruction, each intuitive flash that proves correct, is evidence that your consciousness has entered the bandwidth, where reality itself becomes pliable. And here lies the next frontier: timeline navigation. Imagine not one life, but infinite variations of it, all coexisting as frequencies in the quantum field. In one, you flourish in abundance and joy. In another, you struggle in scarcity. Both are real, both are present, both await your alignment. The difference lies not in effort or chance, but in frequency. Which version you experience depends on the coherence you embody. Mystics hinted at this long ago. The Bhagavad Gita speaks of infinite paths through time. The Kabbalists taught of parallel worlds layered within the tree of life. Modern quantum theorists echo it with the multiverse, probability fields, and branching timelines. What they describe in equations, you feel in your very bones. That subtle shift when you sense yourself stepping into a different stream of reality, as though one possible future slid aside and another opened before you. But this capacity is not without responsibility. To navigate timelines consciously requires stability. Just as a sailor must know how to hold the rudder steady against shifting winds, so must your awareness remain coherent, while reality offers multiple doors at once. Without coherence, the leap is unstable, chaotic, even dangerous. With coherence, it becomes art. And so as you stand on this threshold, know that your personal awakening ripples outward. Each act of alignment within you becomes resonance for others. Each moment of coherence strengthens the collective field. You are not awakening for yourself alone. You are a transmitter, a beacon, a bridge. The leap you embody makes the leap of humanity more possible. This is the revolution, not in the future, but here, now, in the frequency you carry, in the coherence you embody, in the timelines you learn to navigate with conscious intent. The extraordinary is no longer a dream to be chased. It is a reality waiting to be chosen. The impossible is no longer a miracle for the few. It is becoming the natural mode of those who remember their true nature. The question that remains is simple. Will you step fully into coherence? Will you claim your place as a conscious participant in the evolution of reality itself? For the window is open, the momentum is building, and the universe waits only for your alignment. This is not the end of your journey. It is the beginning of the leap, the collective leap, the quantum leap, the leap into timelines where humanity remembers what it has always been: universal intelligence, awake and creating through billions of luminous perspectives. The revolution is not coming. It is manifesting through you